This is Kat Sturtz from rockingyourpath.com and another episode of Fast Action Fridays. Today, my special guest is Stephanie Grams, who's going to be talking about 4 tips for better relationships. And who among us couldn't improve some of our relationship skills? So nice to have you with me today, Stephanie.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you for inviting me.
And you want to tell people a little bit about your background?
Yes, I will do that. I have a diverse background that includes marketing and publicity as a virtual assistant and also a nonprofit program director. So relationships are very important.
Yep, absolutely. And I've done a lot with the nonprofit sector too. Some of my fondest memories are heading up certain things. And now I'm more on the sidelines and as a helper, and I have my favorite ones to work with. But whether it's nonprofits or just our everyday life or our for-profit life, because all of us have to pay bills, better relationships is really what we're always aiming for. So tell us a little bit about why we should even consider improving. I mean, are there any among us who just think we've got it nailed?
I'm sure there's some personalities like that. But I think everybody has room for improvement when it comes on working, with better relationships. We're bound to eventually meet someone that might rub us the wrong way at first, so these tips might actually be helpful with that.
Yeah. I'm old enough now that there are some clients I just say, this isn't working. And it's not a matter of improving the relationship. It's that you need to be working with someone else.
Yes, I do agree with that as well.
All right. So take us through some of the fast action tips that you've got today that anyone could apply.
Okay. They're really simple tips. Many times that we're almost animated in the way that we talk to others or listen. So it's always good to have a kind of a refresher on these little tips here. The one is basically pay attention to whoever's speaking. Sometimes, it might sound like the Peanuts where the teachers are going wah, wah, wah. But you want to at least pay attention to, what they're saying. Show a little bit of involvement or interest in that. You'll want to use body language the right way. If you're at a business networking meeting, whether you're nonprofit or for-profit, and you're standing there and you're in your little huddle and you're meeting and greeting each other, if you're standing there with your arms crossed across your chest, they might read into that like, oh, she's not approachable, I'm not talking to her. I mean, nobody wants that. So paying attention, where your arms are, what you're doing, that's very helpful. Another thing is providing feedback. Sometimes, maybe in our personal life, our spouse or child will ask us questions, but not really expect us to give them an answer. So we need to be real careful about how we respond to people and questions. Some questions really don't need a response. So that's very important. And the last thing is definitely, you want to be honest when you respond to somebody's questions, but be tasteful and tactful, in how you answer their questions. Not that you necessarily have to sugarcoat something, especially if it's important.
Right. Absolutely. I especially liked your number 3 one about providing feedback. One of the things that I've often done with my clients is help them understand when somebody's asking for feedback, or if they're explaining they have a spouse or a business partner, that they aren't free to just say, I just need to let something out. I don't need you to fix this for me. And it's like, go ahead and tell them that up front, that you just need someone to listen to you vent for a bit. You don't expect them to solve it for them. And just giving them that out right at the beginning can save a lot of grief on both parts later on.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Having that sounding board, knowing that somebody's listening, not that you expect them to solve the issue or problem or you know, just having the extra ears.
Yep, absolutely. Do you find that that's a more prevalent phenomenon for men or women, that they want to jump in and fix something?
Personally, it has been more of a male response. You know, they want to be the provider, protector, so they're there to feel like they need to solve it. Whereas the women in my life are like, oh, you know, I hear you, I understand. And so I have seen a difference between male and female responses to that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I used to teach a workshop called He Said, She Said, and there's a lot of good information out there that help people understand that traditionally men and women use certain phrasing in the same situation, but we mean different things by it. And it's definitely not all across the board, but stereotypes come about because it's been frequently found to be that way. And just saying, I hear you, or, you know, I understand, isn't the same thing as I agree with, or I want to follow through on that. And that in particular is often different between a man answering or a woman answering.
Yes.
Have you found that to be true?
I have. You know, the female response a lot of times is more of maybe a motherly kind of comforting response. And, you know, as far as the men, it's like, well, how do you want me to fix this? How do I help you get through this? I don't want you to help. I just want you to listen. I don't know if they kind of understand, but their heart's in the right place.
Yeah, and it is their upbringing, and it's a hard not to get mad at that when all we want to do as perhaps as a woman is share that. I heard one of my mentors and some courses I took in the past say that women speak to understand what we feel, and men wait to feel and then speak. So that can contribute to that disparity between what we want when we're expressing something that's not working right. And goes right to that heart of, I don't want you to fix it. I just need to get this out of my brain so I can kind of ruminate on it. And if there's something I think you can do, I may ask for your help at that point. But again, letting them know that up front, whether it's a spouse or a business partner or a networking partner or a classmate, can really set the stage for a deeper relationship, a better relationship that doesn't go through so many ruts and bumps along the way. Can you share any other examples of what following through on any of these tips looks like when you're doing them well, and as opposed to when we're maybe not doing them so well?
Perhaps the second point was the body language, the nonverbal. That, at least for me, is easier to pick up on. You know, and I think, you know, females are really, really good at that. If you put us all, and again, I'll use the business networking picture, you know, all of us in business have been to at least one type of business networking type of group meeting. And when you're new, you really don't know anybody. You walk in and you're reading the body language of everybody else in there. You can tell who knows each other already, and you kind of feel like you're maybe a sore thumb, like you don't belong. So, you know, you typically look for the smiling face, or maybe the other female that's talking with her hands a lot. And, you know, when you're using your hands, when you talk a lot, you kind of seem like more approachable, as opposed to somebody that might be clutching her folder tightly, or her briefcase, or something along those lines. So the nonverbal, I think, speaks volumes opposed to just verbally, you know. So
now, breaking through that barrier, is it different if you're just an attendee as opposed to maybe one of the hosts or someone whose responsibility is to help people get together and kind of break the ice? can you help us along with maybe some of the do's and don'ts for that?
If you are the host, typically you're the one that's going to spot a new person walking into this meeting. And, I've been a host before, so I would purposely look for the new face. You can always tell when somebody walks in, even if they're a very confident person, you can just tell that, oh, they're new here. So you reach out, hi, let's get your name on a name tag. I'm so-and-so, I'm glad you're here. What type of business are you in, or nonprofit? What is your career? Oh, when I'm listening, I'm actively listening to see who I can place that person next to and give that introduction.
Oh.
That kind of breaks the ice. So taking the leadership role as that host, I think obviously it sets the tone for the entire meeting for this new person, but also it's a huge responsibility because now you've set yourself up as somebody that's open, that they can approach for any reason.
Oh, yeah. I can even give an example of where that didn't go so well with me sometimes. For many years, I was a substitute teacher, and it got to the point where I knew within 6 steps into a school how my day was going to be based on how I was approached or came upon the first person. And it didn't matter whether it was a faculty member or the janitorial staff or a student. If I was greeted as I came in or past someone, and either they just said hello or, can we help you get to where you're going or whatever, I knew my day was going to be pretty good. But I went to a couple schools and there was like no contact, from anybody, whether the students were down with their heads down and they just ignored you. And the same was true of the faculty I passed. And I subbed there for a good 6 or 7 months. And to this day, I still don't know where the staff lounge is because no one ever bothered to tell me. And I got kind of belligerent and I thought, I'm not going to ask. Every other school I've been to, they greet me. I've had students say, let me take you to the office so you can get checked in, or just by virtue of the fact that I'm saying hello, I felt comfortable asking, where I had to go to if it was my first time in a new school. And that school, I eventually just took them off the list of places I was willing to sub at, because after that long, it's like, my goodness, now I understand why the kids all feel like zombies when I'm actually in the room. It was hard to engage with them even as a substitute teacher, which I normally did not have trouble doing. And, but like you said, how your body language is, how you're greeted by the people who should be greeting you, it makes a big difference.
Yes, it does. It sets
Have you, yeah. Have you got any whoopsies to share that you've been involved with?
Oh, wow. I have. So when I was younger, we won't go into age, I had very little understanding of the nonverbal body language and how I seemed, how other people felt when they saw me. And one day I had a boss walk up to me and say, Stephanie, are you okay? And I said, oh yeah, I'm fine. Why? And he goes, because you're speaking volumes by the look on your face. And I was taken aback. I had never heard that before. And I thought, oh, I better not look at him anymore because I don't know what that means. And so, I let that stew a little bit, 3 or 4 days. And I finally talked to a mentor of mine, and I said, my boss said, I speak volumes by my face. And so I told her the story, and she goes, oh, you just do a lot of thinking on the outside.
Oh, what a great phrase.
Yeah. So here, as I was working, apparently my thoughts were very apparent on my face. And I go back to that day. I knew exactly what I was thinking while I was working. I was worried about my children in daycare while I was working at this restaurant. And, as I was a young mom and I felt torn. So apparently those thoughts were on my face. And so he approached me, "Are you okay?" So I have learned through the years that I need to watch my thoughts, because I'm the type of person where I will wear that on my face. I don't want someone to think ill of me. So
Yeah, not a good poker player, probably,
no,
are you?
no. Maybe with some sunglasses on or something.
Yeah, yeah, it is amazing. I don't make a good secretary. I never wanted to be a secretary. I can do an excellent job. I can, do the administrative. And there were a few years when I had for lack of a better reason, took a job as a secretary to transition from one thing to another especially before working for myself full time. And I had a boss who really, it was very apparent he had trouble connecting with women who he believed either acted or he felt intimidated by, either because they had more schooling or knew how to do something. I mean, he actually forbid me to use keyboard shortcuts when I was using Excel because he didn't know how to do them, and he thought I was only doing it to show him off. And it's like, but you're not even here when I'm doing it, and there's no change to the actual spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But he got so frustrated one day with what I now know was his lack of skill in a particular area that I excelled at, that he said, "You remind me just of my wife." And it's like, you don't want to hear that when you know he's having trouble with his wife.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. That is
Yeah. And then I'm sure I could have I'm sure there were things I could have done to mitigate that a little bit more too, but yeah, I didn't plan on being in the job long, and he was making it really clear that I didn't want to be in the job long.
That's not a good working relationship at all.
No. All right. So when we're talking about looking at somebody, how important is that also when it's in a situation like we have today where we're having a virtual meeting? Now I have to look at my camera rather than look at you on the screen, or it looks like I'm looking, down at my keyboard or looking onto my other screen or something. So what do you have extra tips for that?
Okay. So virtual meetings have been part of my life for at least 10 years. And so there's a few tips I can share. One, don't do what I'm doing where I sit in my chair and do this, because you become off kilter and it messes up the screen. But seriously and honestly, just always try to be yourself. Most people don't like the way they look or sound.
Mm-hmm.
You have to overcome that if we're going to grow as business owners, because this virtual meeting is the way of the world. I don't think it's going away. Let's see, like you said, for the video, the camera position, you don't want to take care of what's surrounding you. Make sure there's no chaos in the background or mess, especially if you're working with children in the house. You might want to record when they're taking a nap or outside. Let's see, what else?
Well, I can give one example with, about that busy background, not only the noise, but the visual. Now, I keep the packing styrofoam that came with my whiteboard, and I have it taped over my whiteboard for two reasons. One, it's full of notes right now, which would be very distracting behind me. And two, it catches the light from my overhead light and my recording light, so there are bright spots on it. And it's a simple matter of to mitigate both of those things just by putting the cover over it.
Very nice. I love that tip. Very good. I like that. Thank you.
All right. So are there any differences we need to know working in the nonprofit environment from a regular work environment or just our regular personal lives? Or do all of these tips translate across the board?
I've been blessed to work in both the profit and nonprofit. And although all of these tips are important, it doesn't matter where you're at in life, even if it's every day in your family, household, or neighbors. When you are just out and about, nonprofit or profit, you just always want to keep the other person in mind. You know, who are you speaking to? Are they trying to convey a message? You know, you have so many different things you need to pay attention to, you know, cultural differences, body language and how you interpret each other and what you're saying. Just simply by looking at the person and watching them give the verbal feedback while they're speaking can help with any type of barrier you may find yourself dealing with at that time. So really, I think it's safe to say it's the same across the board, regardless of the type of organization.
All right. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot with a final question.
Oh, no.
We're in a public meeting, networking meeting, you know, either business or a nonprofit or a chamber meeting, and we're in a conversation and we need to extricate ourselves from this, either because it's not going well or you've got a time commitment or something else. Can you give us some tips that are gracious ways to remove ourselves?
I can certainly try. You can say, oh, you know what, Steve, I have really enjoyed speaking with you and getting to know you. Let's schedule a time to meet for coffee. Are you free on Wednesday? You know, that's a nice way of saying, I have really got to go. I have to leave. You can also say something along the lines of, Sally, I appreciate you taking the time to explain this to me. I have some other questions, but right now I have a meeting in 15 minutes. Can I call and schedule a later time to meet with you? Those have been the best ways for me to exit the conversation. A good, polite conversation where I didn't feel like in danger or anything like that.
Right. And I think that puts an exclamation point on your tip about really listening to the conversation, because you've just indicated to that person that you were really listening to what they said.
Yes. Use their name, their first name is so important. Get their first name at the beginning of the conversation and try to remember that, if nothing else, because that's so important.
Well, I really want to thank you for dropping by today, all the way. I think you're in Florida right now, right? But you've been all over the country.
Yes, we have. Yes.
All right, so you're in the peninsula down at the bottom of the country, where I'm in the peninsula up at the top of the country in Michigan.
Very nice.
That's more than 4 tips for better relationships, and I love that we covered so much. And as you mentioned at the beginning, they're simple tips. They're tips we should have learned in kindergarten, first grade, but it's always good to get a primer on them and realize that they're just as important as we grow older and move into other relationships and other networking opportunities. So I'm glad that you were able to share them with us in such a concise and simple way. And I hope that people watching this, especially watching the replay, will think about their own relationships and what they can do on their side to improve the relationship dynamic with whomever you're speaking with, whether it's business or private. And love to hear more questions. You can reach Stephanie. Her link's going to be in there. And I'm sure she'd love to talk with you. Thanks again for dropping by today, Stephanie, and sharing your advice.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you for having me.
This is Kat Sturtz from rockingyourpath.com, closing another episode of Fast Action Fridays, reminding you to come back next week when I have another great special guest, and always reminding you to keep rocking your unique path to success.